Hi everyone, my name is Aniel Per. I am one of the students that were chosen this week to talk about Chapter 5. I had two questions that I will try to bring an answer to them to the best of my abilities. And so let's get right to it. The first question is, according to the realist perspective, what unique feature of the post-Cold War world drives international outcomes? As we all know, realist perspective see events since the end of the Cold War primarily in terms of the shifting distribution of power but not in terms of international institution or ideological conflicts. And relative power shifts cause what happens in international institutions and how countries identify themselves. This power shift occur at all levels of analysis. So basically, one of the unique feature of the post-Cold War world that drives international outcome is the fact that the distribution of power is always shifting. So either it's on the systemic level or on the domestic level or the individual level. Each one of those level, the power is always shifting. That will be causing international institution and countries to behave differently depending on what exactly is going on at the moment. So, for example, at the systemic level, the United States emerged from the bipolar Cold War as the world's only superpower, which means, as we all know, after the Cold War, the United States was the only hegemon that came out of that particular world. So, as such, the distribution of power was unipolar. So, only one way the power was shifting only one way, so unipolar. So, as expected, the unipolar power expanded its footprint throughout the world, enlarging alliances and widening the global trading system. So, from there, that's when we started to have what we call nowadays globalization, which became the trademark of the 1990s and the year of the 2000s. So, from there, power transition realists hoped to preserve this US hegemony, but power balancing realists saw that the unipolar moment as temporary. So, in other words, the power transition realists had this hope that the US hegemony will last, but at the same time, the power balancing one just saw that unipolar moment as something that was only temporary. So, multipolarity was more the rule. Smaller and rising powers resisted hegemony. Russia and China declared the determination to roll back the global Western orders. Confrontation flared in the Balkans, Ukraine, Taiwan, Korea, and the Pacific Islands. From there, military intervention in Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, Crimea revived great power hostilities. So, in other words, we on one way we have the power realist, and then on the other the power transition realist, and then on another side we have the power balancing realist. One side power transition realist and the other side power balancing realist. Further along the way, we're gonna see that each one of them has a position that is totally in contrary with the others. So we just saw the systemic level. Now let's go on the domestic level. On the domestic level, the realist perspective highlight power shift back towards state actors, sovereignty, and non-conventional means of social security. So populist movements call on established elites to push back against globalization. So people like the British citizen voted to leave the European Union, and European citizens demanding tighter border control to stanch immigration flow and American citizen. So in other words, in the domestic level, the fact that the realistic perspective saw that they were having power shift when the power shift from one side to another, it doesn't only affect the country as a whole, but also the state actor, the sovereignty, and even the national security of that of said country. So finally, on the individual and foreign policy level of analysis, the realist perspective highlight the internal struggle for power among the many bureaucratic, economic, ethnic, and tribal groups that decide a country's foreign policy. These conflicts simmer beneath the surface in all states, and in the United States particularly, polarization in Congress and the country at large throughout all U.S. initiative. So we had religious hatred divided the Balkan country, tribal rivalries start Libya, Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, and even Pakistan. So that was all for the first question. Now let's move on to the second one. How do the power transition and power balancing schools view and construct international strategy for the United States around this future? So as I explained earlier, power transition and power balancing are two different they have two different type of views when it comes to the different features, and they're basically at the contrary of each other. So power transition realists believe that American dominance is the safest structure for American security, and that dominance can be preserved. So as the United States is currently and has been an hegemon in the Western Hemisphere, so they believe that it's a safe bet to assume that the United States will continue to be that great power in this hemisphere, because as they say, hegemony stabilize and but does not destabilize. However, power balancing believe that American dominance will not last. The power balancing realists believe that based on their calculation and their thought, that it was just a matter of transition. It was just temporary, that the United States was an hegemon, but in order to achieve the equilibrium that was so well needed and to restore power balance, it has to that power or that hegemon status had to shift from the United States through a few other countries. So that being said, Charles Krauthammer, a well-known realist commentator in the called the 1990s the unipolar movement, or alternatively a holiday from history. So he meant that unipolarity was a brief interlude from conflict and the balance of power. The system will cycle back from empower to equilibrium. So that was all from what I had to do today, and I hope I was able to explain as clearly as I could, and that you learn a lot from this. Thank you.